Musicians Tegan and Sara have been a staple of Canadian music for more than 2 decades. Together, the twins have become one of the more successful indie pop acts this country's ever produced. But their journey started out in Calgary, and it had rocky beginnings, especially with the media. That's an area Melody Lau explores in her new book, Tegan and Sara, Modern Heartthrobs. Melody is also a producer at CBC Music, and she joins us now. Hi, Melody. Nice to see you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
What is it about Tegan and Sara and their music that appeals to you?
I'm just a huge fan of pop music, and I feel like Tegan and Sara are one of the best pop writers in Canada / in general. And they've always been really good pop writers ever since the beginning. They didn't always make pop music, but it was clear from the very beginning that they were really good at writing really catchy songs. And I don't think they get enough credit for that. But also as people, they're really big activists and very outspoken about LGBT rights and representation. And yeah, they're just really great people all around.
How has their music and career created space for LGBTQ plus voices?
So Tegan and Sara talk about this a lot in interviews where kind of growing up, they didn't see a lot of queer representation in the mainstream in music. A lot of what they saw was Katie Lang and Melissa Etheridge, maybe sort of older artists. And mind you, this was kind of the time before the internet, so it was really hard to find and build communities. And so Tegan and Sara were arguably one of the first visibly queer musicians that their generation saw. And so that not only let them build really amazing safe spaces for queer people in their concerts, but also really inspire a lot of really young LGBT people to get into music.
You explore their relationship with the music press, especially early on. Why did that appeal to you?
I just think it was really important to kind of capture that time in music and music journalism. It was the late 90s and early 2000s was when Tegan and Sara got started. And really around that time, majority of music journalism / journalism in general was dominated by straight white men. And you really see how that impacts marginalized artists like Tegan and Sara. And a lot of the writing was really not great. And even when it was positive, it was maybe coded in language that was homophobic or sexist. And I just think it was important to kind of really capture that time, both for Tegan and Sara and kind of music at large at the time.
Somebody listening right now might think that this is a biography that you've written, but it isn't. You've chosen a different way to tell their story. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Tegan and Sara agreed to get interviewed for this book, but it was never an authorized biography. The book is really kind of telling the story of Tegan and Sara's career, but also through the lens of the media and the way that they were perceived and treated, and just the homophobia and the sexism that was really rampant during that time. But also, I wanted to highlight the amazing career and fan base that they had built despite all of that.
Do you feel like we've come far enough in terms of representation and changing those negative media relationships they had early on?
We've come a long way, and again, Tegan and Sara were really instrumental to, kind of that whole journey of getting to this point, but we're still very much, we have a lot of work left to do in terms of queer representation, but also trans representation, non-binary representation. So the language is still kind of developing, but we're all kind of, I think we can agree that some of the stuff that we've read about Tegan and Sara back in the day were just not acceptable.
Melody Lau, great to chat with you today. Your first book, Tegan and Sara, Modern Heartthrobs, published by Invisible Publishing, is available now. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.